What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Ragnar of Ophidian I. Thank you so much for being here today, man. It's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. It's a great time to be talking to you. We got the new album Desolate, the debut Ophidian I album on Season of Mist, the sophomore full-length album. Being that this is the first Ophidian I full-length album since 2012, was this just a direct continuation for Ophidian I, or was this almost a new start for the band with the new label and everything?
Yeah, it's definitely like a new start. It's been so many years and there's been plenty of lineup changes. And I guess like the only real reason we kept the name is just, because we've always kept in contact throughout the years. But there are only two of the original members left. And, after the last album, everyone kind of went their separate ways, but maybe stayed in touch. But, there might have been a riff or a lick here left over from those days. So when we really got together again as a group of friends and wanted to make a technical death metal album, we used that as a starting point and kind of just kept the name. But looking at it now, we might have well just have come up with a new band and a new name because it's very very different. It's a different group of people, and even the ones who are still left from the original lineup, they're obviously things have changed for them over those years. I mean, we are all on the either side of 30 right now, and when the last album was made, it was just a bunch of people barely out of their teens. And yeah, I would say we pretty much regard it as a brand new band.
Well, yeah, and do you think that maybe you also kind of changed your style from what we heard on the Solvet album in a way, or is there going to be some reminiscence of some old Ophidian I as well?
I think the style is, yeah, it's pretty much changed in, I would say, we have more emphasis on speed on this one, and I guess they're totally our new sources of inspiration for just when you get the new members, they are listening to something different maybe than the others used to in the old lineup, and hopefully we have also just maybe matured a little bit as musicians. So we're trying to make a more coherent album, even though the last one. I'm sure the guys are also very proud of that one, but I wasn't part of that album, but I like listening to it. But I totally think it's like a very different style.
Well, do you think being that every member of Ophidian I has, played in other bands as well, like you, as I know, play in Hellthrow, but, with bands like Azoic and so many other bands and, other members also being involved in projects, does that allow each member to kind of bring in their own style or maybe bring in their own unique element into Ophidian I as well?
Yeah, definitely not just your own style, but each one of us has been at this thing for at least 10 or 15 years, meaning just extreme music in general, and you just gain so much experience, how to approach a project, what is the most efficient way to get to an end goal, and be very decisive about what you want to do instead of just used to be a lot more just jamming out some riffs and seeing what comes of it. But for this release, we really started out with deciding, which is the direction we're going to take and how are we going to get there. And since we've all been active for all these years, each one of us has something to contribute to make the whole process more streamlined and never lose sight of that goal. And the goal was to make like a really fast and technical
Hmm.
album.
You succeeded in that regards. That's no doubt about it. It almost seems like that this was the album you always wanted to make, right? There wasn't too much improvisational elements, or was there maybe at all some experimentation at all with the songwriting in this?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that. And you're right, we're super happy with the outcome. And uh, I've thought about it before about if there was some experimentation going on in the album, because I've been asked in another interview, and I think uh, it's hard to say that we were experimenting a lot, because when it comes down to it, we just wanted to make a straight up technical death metal album, and it's a genre of metal that's been around for years and years now. So I guess we were more just trying to make the very best album that we could, something that we would like to listen to, and I guess there are other bands out there who might delve into more experimental songs or do something more, a little bit maybe more dynamic even. But we just wanted each one of these songs to, be impressive and pack a punch. And that being said, it still, still wasn't easy. There's a there we still had our jobs cut out for us in that regard. So yeah, we were pretty sure of what we were gonna try to do before we started. So maybe there weren't that many experiments, but just hard work to try to create these songs and make them memorable as well.
Well, technical death metal has kind of like evolved in itself when you compare like a classic tech death album like The Sound of Perseverance, and then you compare that to an album like Obscura's Omnivium, and then you compare that to like Archspire's Relentless Mutation or something like that. Like, was there a specific reference point that you were looking at for making this sort of technical death metal album? Because again, like technical death metal, I mean, death sounds very different from cynic. That sounds very different from suffocation. So
Yeah, that's true. I think uh, as a group, I think we're mostly inspired by these early to mid 2000s bands, which is these classic albums by Spawn of Possession, Necrophagist or Fakist or however you say it, and these are our idols who we keep coming back to and listening to all the time. And then maybe we have an added element of just speed. We've been listening to bands a lot like Origin and other hyper fast bands like that, and maybe Psychroptic. So I guess we're a little bit stuck in that early 2000s, mid 2000s era of technical death metal. We totally enjoy the new style, and I, myself personally, am absolutely in love with the new Archspire record that came out a few years ago, and totally can understand why people are calling it just a masterpiece.
yeah,
But I think they just carved out their own niche, and we would never be able to copy that, and we wouldn't even try. So
it's absurd that like other human beings made that album.
yeah, you can just it's so obvious that these guys are extremely dedicated, and it's either going to be motivating for you as a musician to look at those guys, or it's just going to be demoralizing. And I guess you just kind of have to make a choice and make sure it doesn't take all the wind out of you, because when you hear that stuff for the first time, and especially when you see the live videos from them and you can see like, oh my god, they're actually playing this shit live, you're just like, fuck, I gotta step up my game.
Yeah, and it makes it more frustrating in the fact, like I've interviewed them on 3 occasions, and they are some of the funniest human beings you will ever meet in metal. Like they don't take themselves seriously at all. Like how the hell do you play this stuff so good and you're just smiling and laughing the whole time? You would think that the most technical, impressive sounding music are usually done by the most miserable people.
Yeah, I mean that's a relief to hear, and actually I've heard it from other people too who've spoken to them. I've heard that they're super cool guys, and I just think there's a difference between taking yourself seriously or taking your work seriously. And I have lots of respect for people who can take their work super seriously, but then go home at the end of the day and just be a normal human, not having to act a certain role, and being a lot into black metal too. I'm started, you kind of get a little bit disillusioned as you grow older with all these characters, so to speak, in that scene. I still like the music, but I don't really buy it anymore when adults are trying to sell me the idea that they are, practicing Satanist or something like that. I just find it a little bit silly. So it's easier to take someone's work seriously if you know that this is their whole passion. That's what it's all about, is the music itself. And it's just, and I would say tech death and what these guys have done, like Archspire, is just the peak of the entertainment business.
Well,
It's just that's what it is at the end of the day.
I've always called technical death metal thinking man's death metal because it's not just the technical excellence that's impressive, but it almost seems like it's very conceptually driven. I mean, when you look at Obscura, I mean, their whole catalog is evolved around one specific concept. And then you look at Chuck Schuldner's lyrics, and I mean, just the lyrics on Sound of Perseverance or Crystal Mountains are just geniuses. So, like, do you consider maybe that with the making of Desolate or Ophidian I know you're not the vocalist, but would you say that maybe that there was sort of like a conceptual idea as well that was evolved around the making of this?
Yeah, certainly. And what you just spoke of, this extra level beyond just technicality, where you're trying to create trying to paint a picture or trying to make, you know, a memorable melody or a hook in a song. I think that's just an extra step, which is so much harder to take than just, you know, just playing extremely technical music. Because these bands that you mentioned, they all have that extra, because there's a bunch of super technical bands out there, which, you know, they're so good at playing their instruments and they can play so fast, and but the songs maybe aren't that memorable. That's just a different level of musicianship. And for us with Desolate, it was actually a goal that we really talked about, trying to not just make it a cacophony of insane, you know, shredding, but trying to actually make coherent melodies and riffs that even the casual listener would be able to pick out from the music and hopefully remember. So, and I think that was the biggest challenge. It was a lot of work, you know, practicing the songs, coming up, you know, just all of us stepped up our musical skills for this album. We were in the practice space for like a couple of years, just relentlessly trying to get faster and more tight. But in the end, I think the hardest part was to try to also make songs, not just, you know, not just a riff barrage, not just a dumpster of, you know, crazy shreds. It also had to be a song.
Yeah, and look, I don't care how if Randy Rose is in your band. If the song is not going to be good, it's not going to matter how good the riffs are. There is such a thing as great. I've always said great riffs don't make a great song. Great blast beats don't make a great song. It all has to be compelling. It's like video games. Just because the graphics are good doesn't mean the game is going to be good. So that's how I kind of look at it. And you kind of have the ultimate burden being the drummer, because you not only have to focus on making the rhythm compelling, but you also have to hold the song together. Do you prefer to have music already in front of you before you start laying down your rhythm sections?
Well, it's since you asked that, it's actually one of the parts about the making of this album that is maybe a little unexpected, is that most of the drums, or the skeleton for the drumming on this album, are written by guitarists. So the guys would make demos of the songs, you know, and they would always program some drums and bring them to me to check them out. And I would say 99% of drummers hate that arrangement. They want to be able to come up with their own drumming, and that's what I've done in previous bands on previous albums. But for this one, I truly enjoyed that, because it totally ripped me out of my comfort zone. When a guitarist comes up with a drum fill or a section, sometimes it's just ridiculous. You know, they might come up with something that sounds completely impossible to play. But I took it as a challenge. So for me, it was a lot of work just in solitude, listening again and again, trying to imitate what they had programmed. And then when I had got the hang of it, that's when I started changing things, sprinkling in my own gimmicks, my own type of fills, and trying to make it even more extreme in parts, or maybe stepping back a little bit when I knew there was going to be an exceptionally crazy guitar solo, and I knew, you know, it's just a little bit too much of the drums. I need to slow down here and let the guitars really shine. So, but yeah, from the start, the guys were already, you know, and I think it makes the drums complement the riffs even better. When the person who's writing the riffs, he obviously has something in his mind. You know, guitarists are probably always imagining drums along to their riffs when they're just jamming out in their home studio or whatever. And why not allow them to bring that idea to you and see if it works? So
yeah, and we're not going to talk.
It was a new experience for me.
Yeah. And not to talk shit, but now that we're on this, how off time is the arrangement sometimes without actual drums put on it? It has to happen more times than not, right?
Yeah, well, not really with these guys, because, you know, we've been at it for so long, and also they know me as a drummer. So maybe even if they're coming up with their own ideas, they still know what I'm capable of, and they've heard me play for so long. But in other projects that I've been a part of, that is very frequent. And bro, let me tell you, if a guitarist tries to make a tempo track for you to follow along with when you're, you know, writing drums for their guitar demos, that can be such a nightmare, because they will come up with offbeat time signatures when it's supposed to be some other way, or, you know, triplets over over a normal, 4-count riff. And oh, yeah, don't get me started on that.
Yeah. And to all people starting a band, just remember, if your drummer sucks, your band sucks. So just work well with the drummer. The rhythm section could fuck the whole thing up for you.
That's true. That's true, and it's so important that you try to bond with your other bandmates, and you're not just alone in your own head when you're playing the drums, because the more that you kind of like work together as string section and percussions, the whole thing will just be so much tighter. And sometimes you see really tight and awesome drummers, but the guitar players are not really following along. They're just doing their own thing. So I guess like the more that you play together, the more years that you spend together in the practice space, you become more adhesed to each other and just tighter as a result.
Yeah.
And I've jammed with some other some of my friends who I've been playing with since we were like 16 or 17. Even if we would pick up again today, if we haven't played together for a couple of years, we're still instantly super tight. But then I can jam out with a super great guitarist, but we've never played together before. He's from another country or something, and it takes some time to understand each other and be a whole unit.
Definitely.
I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's my experience. So
No, it's your experience. So whether it makes sense or not to other people does not matter. You're telling the truth. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for a great discussion. I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear Ophidian I's new album, Desolate. This is tech death in its extremest form, and I can't wait for people to hear it. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for the release of this album? Like when this bullshit virus that shall not be named is finally behind us, can you maybe be bringing Ophidian I on the road?
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's our dream, and we're just looking forward to next year. I'm sure we're going to be able to bring this to live audiences. Until then, we have lots of digital content coming out, behind the scenes, maybe some snippets from the recording process and teasers and stuff like that. Playthroughs, we already have a drum playthrough out. So please just check us out on Facebook, and there'll be something to keep you interested in the meantime until we can come and play at hopefully your local bar
I would
for your
love.
venue.
There's plenty of Irish pubs here in New York City that you could lay to waste. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Ophidian I. Be sure to check out Desolate out on Season of Mist. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.